Yes.
Okay, first I want to say happy birthday to Frank. Happy birthday, Frank.
It's also Patrick's birthday today.
Which
Thank you.
Patrick? Which Patrick?
Our Patrick on our task force, Patrick Shelley.
Is it really? Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday.
Patrick.
Happy birthday.
Oh,
Thank you.
wow. Thank you.
Thank all of you.
Okay. I did not know that. All
So you're a
right.
Libra.
No.
Yeah, amongst other things, I guess.
Okay, so any comments on the forum on Wednesday?
I have one thought I'd like to share. I felt uncomfortable that we started with Jim and then we showed his video. And the reason I felt uncomfortable was that, you know, we want to create a space where people who've had encounters with the White Plains Police and would like to share them, that in and of itself is difficult enough. And I just felt like what Jim had to say would have been more appropriate for a meeting like today with the task force. And I felt like it was setting a tone where a person like Miss Barnes, who ended up having the confidence to share her horrific story with us, you know, it could have deterred someone like Miss Barnes from wanting to share with us. That was the thought that I had.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you. I did not know what he was going to say. I had no idea how that was going to go. And I kind of told Karen the same thing that evening, you know, but I really didn't know what he was going to say.
Okay.
So I'm with you on that one.
So Janice, I can comment. You know, the YPI was started in White Plains. It's the Youth Police partnership. It was started in White Plains, and I think what we were trying to show was when police officers and young people are involved, engaged together, it creates a healthier environment, a healthier community. And what it did was it demonstrated that when people work together, we can have a higher outcomes in terms of accountability, both in terms of police and young people. So if you saw the photos, a lot of those photos were shot at Winbrook in public housing. So, and some of it was shot in Boston, but a lot of it was pictured here in White Plains. And we wanted to have that picture as a part of our conversation.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I just think for this session, for these sessions, we're trying to encourage people to come on and talk about more negative experiences that they are having. I mean, it's okay to share the positive, but when you start with that kind of opening, it could have made people feel a little less likely to talk about negative experiences. So, I mean, I guess you could look at it both ways, but thankfully, the woman, I thought her name was Jones. Was it Jones? Tracy Jones?
Yes.
Tracy
Sorry
still.
for the delay.
Say that
Sorry
again.
for the delay. Sorry for the delay. I am in the meeting. This is Rosemary Eller.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it still went on and people did speak. So I see both your points, but I was feeling like nada that night, but it didn't change things. She did spoke. I did have a couple of people tell me that they thought that the YPI, the video was good, was a good touch. I don't know. Any other?
Hi, Janice. This is Marie Vitale. You know, I missed that meeting because of work, but can I watch a video of it? Is there a recording somewhere?
Yes.
Yes, Marie. We're just working with the video now, and I should be able to have it posted for you all.
Okay, great.
In the next day or two. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other comments about the forum, the session? We don't have everybody on. We're missing a few people.
I'm wondering if Miss Jones's story was known previously to our police leaders.
I was wondering that too. And I was also wondering, were they using cameras back then? Because
They should have been. It was 2019. It was
I
June.
just felt that story was so horrific. It was terrible. And it's
They
what we
did
need.
know about it.
Yeah,
because
we
they were
did.
talking about
we
it
did-
yesterday.
We did know about it, and as a matter of fact, Chief, do you want me to comment, or were you going to comment?
No,
I can speak to it.
I think we both can, maybe we can play off of each other here. So, you know, it was on video, and there is, you know, and I'm not, absolutely not discounting Miss Jones's her experience and the way it affected her one single bit, but you know, the facts of the matter were that it was a basic noise complaint. It was handled in a usual fashion. There was nothing wrong with the way the original complaint was handled. When they encountered Miss Jones the second time, she was irate, and the officers tried to talk to her. And I'm not even saying that she doesn't deserve to be. I'm not necessarily. There's no critique on the way on necessarily of her behavior up to a certain point. But the officer did try to speak to her and explain what was going on. And it is an apartment building where her floor, half of a public patio, her windows are there. And there was a Hispanic family having a party that on review was not, it was a family thing. It wasn't a loud raucous party, and it was at 7 o'clock at night. But again, you know, the perspective is understanding that, you know, she has a right to at least a little, some amount of peace and comfort, which we tried to mediate. And we did. We had them move over from away from her window, move some tables that were there. But at one point, and she was very irate at some point, and again, I'm not disparaging her, but there were some, you know, for lack of a better way to put it, trigger words that she had put out there about her displeasure, what I believe about Mexicans. But that really, that's neither here nor there. At one point, there's a door, a common door that leads directly out to the patio. It was being held open by a brick. She was upset that that door in general should be locked. And while our officers were there, she continued to become more irate. She pushed past the officers, picked up the brick and threw it out the door, almost hitting a young boy. And Captain Spencer can elaborate on, he looked at it, and apparently this boy had to duck out of the way. Otherwise, he would have been hit by the brick. At that point, the officers determined that an arrest needed to be made. She resisted, and you know, fought with the officers, not throwing punches, but resisted being arrested, trying to tell you, put your hands on behind your back, you're under arrest. It lasted a very short amount of time, and then they made sure she had a complaint about her dog, and we said the dog is in your apartment, it's fine. They asked her to get her ID. They walked her back into her apartment. Certainly, there were some areas where one of the officers could have afforded her some, you know, she asked for maybe a bathrobe or something, and the officer said, well, you're under arrest, we have to go, or something along those lines. So there certainly are issues that can be addressed by this, but the fact that she said we made the boy say that she threw a rock at him or something. It was not a rock, it was a full-size brick that she picked up and flung out towards the people who were by the patio.
She threw it at the family, yeah. And it nearly missed the 14-year-old boy, and there was an 11-year-old boy standing right behind him. One of the things that I got from it is, you know, just in reviewing it, it wasn't like we went there and we took their word against her word. She picked up a brick and threw it at a family in front of the police officers on body camera. So there was no disputing it. And she was correct in that she had on a nightgown, and when they were placing her under arrest, the nightgown came up a little bit, and she was exposed a little bit for about a half of a second. But that was merely them affecting the arrest. At the point where she was becoming violent with the family, the officers had no option but to place her under arrest. It wasn't like a situation where they could have said, "Ma'am, come inside," or "Please step away." She was actively violent towards the family. And that didn't come across in the story that she told. So one of the things, I mean, listening to the story, it sounded horrific, and I was very, it was heartbreaking hearing her expressing it that way. I immediately reviewed the video, looked up the incident, took a look at the reports that were taken, the statements that the witnesses and the victim gave, reviewed the body cam video. And one thing that I think that they even cut her a break, because had I been sitting on the desk as a tour commander, I might have gone with a charge of attempted assault second with a dangerous instrument, and that's a felony. They only charged her with misdemeanor, which is a threat to do harm or placing someone in imminent fear, which is a misdemeanor. So while the story sounded compelling, and I do feel bad that was her experience with the White Plains Police Department, but she dictated, what we needed to do in that circumstance. And part of me says, I wish I could, there's no way for us to do an immediate fact check, or it might not even be appropriate to do that in a listening session. But I kind of feel like that we were smeared with something painted a certain way, from a perspective that wasn't necessarily fact. And there's no way to take it back after that's out there. So, yeah, Chief.
And again, we're very aware of of her perception. We're not trying to discount. We're very aware of the trauma that can be caused by any arrest. We're not soft soaping anything. This was certainly the least desirable outcome that any of us would have wanted. But Captain Spencer certainly makes a point when he says that she dictated a lot of what happened there, and it's still unfortunate. But as the police department, we're trying to mitigate a situation, and she then picks up a brick and throws it at a family consisting of very young children and adults and everything else. As he said, some of the stuff after that, some of the allowances we could have afforded her could have been better. But she mentioned something about being put in a chokehold. It absolutely did not happen. Once we removed her from the area, the officer who transported her was very compassionate. She said she needed air, and the officer said, "Let me just get down the hill and I'll open the windows for you." He just didn't want any further her either yelling out the window toward the people. It was a matter of about 3 seconds. He rolled the window down. He asked her if that was good, if there's gas. At some point she said, "I can't breathe." He said, "Are you okay? Can you breathe? Are you okay?" And then she just kept talking. This is an example of one of these things, and for lack of a better word, the ugly side of what we are faced with at times. And the consequences will never be good for anyone. But it's not it's not an example of certainly not abuse of force or anything like that.
This is where this committee is going to come in, and we're going to work on de-escalation. Seems to me like maybe more could have been done to de-escalate the situation.
Well, Janice, I'm being very honest with you. The officers were trying to talk to her calmly and explain things. And at one point, and she has this right, but to understand, they're in her apartment doorway. She had come in from outside, not in her apartment. We were at her apartment door, or going to her apartment door. She came from another direction. both ended up, the two officers and the woman ended up in her apartment door, and the officers were trying to talk. Now these people, the other family that was involved was probably 10 feet away, outside on this patio. They said, "Can we go inside and talk to you?" "No, I don't want you in my apartment." So, and that's fine, but this whole thing started evolving right in the hallway, and the officer was saying they were trying to calm her down. And when I say she dictated it, at another point, she just said, "And that these MRFers and this effing door is supposed to be closed," and she kind of moves really fast, bends down, picks up the brick, and throws it out towards this group of people. That was the turning point. I mean, again, it is unfortunate. We handle noise complaints all the time, and almost always we don't have to go back a second time. We very rarely have to issue a summons.
She said that the police didn't come to her the first time. They talked to the other family.
And that's typical, because a lot of times when we go on a noise complaint, the complainant doesn't really want anyone else to know that they're the ones that call the police on their neighbor making noise.
Right.
So when an officer responds, they'll go, and if there's a noisy situation, they'll take measures to resolve the issue. And if there's not, they take a report, and in this instance, they ask the family to move away from the neighbor's window and to be mindful of their neighbors, to keep it down. And when they went back, you can see on the body camera, because they activated the body camera as they were getting out of the car, that there wasn't a lot of noise. It was just a few people. It was probably about 15 people on a patio behind the building at the basement level. Ms. Jones was intent on the police taking more action, even though there was nothing for us to do. She was, and the officers, to give them credit, they tried de-escalating it. And at the point where someone picks up a brick and throws it, I mean, I have kids. So if someone was to throw a brick at my son or daughter, I wouldn't want the police to sit there and talk to them for 15 or 20 minutes. At that point where you're becoming violent against someone else, the police have, that's our job. We have to take action. So, I mean, it's easy for someone to say, "Oh, we should work on de-escalation." But, I've been there as a police officer, as a sergeant on the street, and sometimes things present themselves in front of you where you just have to act, and there's no time for, what in a controlled environment, someone could say, we could do this or we could do that.
Well, I didn't see.
Has her hand up.
Okay.
So I have two quick follow-up questions. One, I thought that noise complaints were not actionable by police until after 11 p.m. That's one question. And then the other part of my question is, does that building have a board of managers? And is there a role for the board of managers to address noise complaints first, to issue fines and penalties to tenants who do not abide by the guidelines for living in that building? So those are my two thoughts.
Okay, so first of all, it's not that they're not actionable. Our noise ordinance says loud or reasonable noise, and we try to take into account the time of day. But to say it's not actionable is inaccurate. If you lived in an apartment and at 12 noon, somebody was blaring a radio that you can hear from a block away, to say that it's not action, we would take action. The first step would be to speak to that person and ask them to turn the radio down, that they're bothering the neighbors, it's too loud under the totality of the circumstances, and hope to gain compliance. The part of that is also they're calling us. I'm very, I take pride in this, in that, as a police department, if somebody calls us, we are not going to say, "I'm sorry, we can't do that. Why don't you call you on a Saturday or Sunday? Why don't you call your building management?" We're going to go to see if we can help the situation. So from that standpoint, we go on all the calls at all hours of the day and night to try to deal with these things. What was it? I'm sorry, what was the second?
Well, is there a role for the Board of Managers or
right.
the building management to play by issuing penalties and
Well,
fees and fines?
So, I thought about when looking about at this, that this would have been a really, at some point when talking to her, I'm sure this, I can only assume it would have come out because it's standard practice, that she's complaining about a tenant. And part of the issue is that the way this access in this building works is that there is a fire escape either or rear entrance, that part of the stairwell comes down near her windows. And there were young kids that were probably going up and down, or people using the bathroom. And she had concern that, they're up and down the fire escape. That certainly would be something that a building manager, a landlord, this is probably more like a landlord. It's probably a 3-story, 2-story, 6, 7, 8 apartment at the most, I think, building, if I have it right. So I like to think that at some point we would have encouraged her to deal with this through the management company, through the landlord, to file a complaint, so that way the landlord does take responsibility and looks to fix any problems dealing with tenants, so that way, excuse me, these things don't happen. The other thing I want to mention is that she did call us and gave her information, and it is, again, something we'll look at. But it is somewhat common, as the captain said, about these noise complaints. When the call was dispatched, they gave the address and the noise complaint and the nature of the call, and did not give out the complainant's information for the officers to go there the first time. She did say that she was at a window at one point and said, I called. Again, some of this is, I don't know the exact location of where she was, but sometimes we just don't want the people that we're speaking to know specifically who called. So she may have, I think the officer said, okay, but where it was, they might have thought the first time around, we took care of the problem. It's no sense knocking on the door and drawing attention to the actual person who complained, because we know sometimes that can cause a little bit more tension. But it would have been good to speak to her the first time. Without a doubt, there is some stuff that could have been done better here. But in terms of her experience, as real as it was to her, there were some the circumstances, as Captain Spencer and I explained, that, again, not trying to beat this dead horse, that dictated what the cops did.
Can I jump in there for a minute, Chief? I was not on the call and did not hear, but I heard from what everyone's talking about. I hear the story. I just like to say that as a committee, I think that there are things that we may have to do in order to make sure that we evaluate what we're hearing completely. And that is one, to understand first what the person has said, but then we may need to also look at what procedures should have been. So we may have to decompartmentalize the pieces to what we're hearing versus before making a judgment as to what took place between the police and this particular person. It is often that when someone goes through something with the police, they bring along with them additional baggage that they might have had in something that had taken place prior. And they're placing that judgment on something that they're telling you now. And they could even heighten that incident as to how severe it was to them and how they communicated to you at a time that took place after it actually took place. So what the person actually felt during the time and at the time that they're now reporting it to you, there could have been some differences in how things actually took place and what actually took place for them and what they have added to their belief in what took place. As a committee, I think that we need to really listen carefully to be able to understand what the complaint is, and then 2, look at what was supposed to take place within procedures of the police. And if we don't, we'll continue to ask the police to justify what they, because we'll run into these situations where someone says something And then we're asking the police to justify, or they may feel that they have to justify their actions. And we're now judging what PD is telling us versus what this person is telling us, versus looking at what the person's complaint was, trying to compartmentalize exactly what that complaint was about, and then looking at procedures to see if the procedures were actually followed.
Thank you for that, Bernie. This is Rosemary. I do agree. I was on the call for most of the last session. And yes, it was gut wrenching. But, one thing I always try to remember, and we all have to remember that someone's perception is their reality. So, I appreciate what was said in terms of giving some background on that situation, because everyone has their own situation. So Bernie, or their perception. So, I do agree with that. And, I don't know if we should be second guessing now, but I have found it helpful, I will be honest, to see your perception, because we've already had the other perception. I do have a question. When you have a building, and can you just tell me if it's your experience that management comes out to manage those types of complaints? Because I feel that in and of itself could be a dangerous situation, depending on, how that tenant is. Is that something that is expected, and is it common, and is it safe?
Sometimes, Rosemary, especially when there's 2-family homes or 3-family homes and the landlord is actually living on premise, you find that a neighbor dispute, when the landlord gets involved, doesn't get any better.
Right.
So, but then there's some landlords who are better than others. So I wouldn't paint it across the board, but this incident, Ms. Jones was already at a level where, I don't think that a landlord or someone would have been able to appease her. She was intent on having those folks just stop and leaving that premise and not engaging in like a family gathering. That's what she wanted. She wanted them to leave.
And the other part of the thing is that, trust me when I say this, we would prefer they never call us and that they do deal with it through their landlords. But the honest truth is a lot of landlords are just non-supportive of, they don't want to know. They want to collect their rent. And I mean, from the small 2 families to big apartment buildings, and people have no recourse but to call us. You know what I mean? Almost always, when it comes to these type of things, we would say to them, we would do what we needed to do. We'd take care of the situation. We'd let the people know that they were bothering their neighbors. And then I don't know, we weren't able to get to this point, but we would say, I would let your landlord know, make sure your landlord. I don't know if Ms. Jones has ever contacted her landlord to express her concerns about what's going on. And I will say this, the position and the location of her apartment and this public patio, this shared patio, I guess, amongst any tenants, is problematic for her. I won't deny that. I mean, her 2 windows are facing right about half this patio. So I just want to make it clear, when we went, we understood the concern, and we took steps to we're not going to, if the family and they're having a party and they're orderly and it's not unreasonable noise, we're not going to make anybody say you can't do this, but we'll make it so that way they can enjoy themselves and have their freedoms, and the person who called can have their peace of mind also. That's what we try to do. I mean, and 99.9% of the times we don't have to go back. And I like to think it's because of the way we handle it. We try to explain things. We try to find a common ground for people. We certainly try to be empathetic to the complaint. But as you said, it's just this was another one of those unfortunate incidents that is the anomaly. It's not common when when we're dealing with somebody and then they take a certain action that causes us to make an arrest. I just, you know, want that clear.
Chief,
I hope you understand. Yeah.
there's also another side to it.
Wait a minute. Can I say something now? You know, we've been going over this for, you know, 40 minutes now, and there's no way this committee is going to be able to resolve whether the police action in this particular incident is justified. I mean, it's not the purpose of this committee to resolve a citizen complaint. We're just hearing that, you know, a particular citizen was complaining about an incident. And of course, we expect that the police officers who decided to arrest this person are going to want to defend whatever they did, you know, despite, you know, some obviously disturbing aspects of not allowing someone to put underwear on or clothing, which, you know, I find to be disturbing. And I have to cause to wonder if the person was one of our wealthier, whiter citizens, that, you know, they wouldn't allow the person to put some clothes on. But we can't resolve these things now.
Well, wait a minute, sir.
Appropriate
I want to
our
respond to the things that you said.
Okay, but wait a minute. All I'm saying is we can't resolve the citizen complaint in this committee.
Correct.
I understand that the police have a position that what they did was justified and that none of these complaints are valid, even though there's some sympathy expressed. But the point of this committee is what procedures should be followed when we have a citizen complaint. What could a citizen do to bring these complaints to their community so that people feel heard and not dismissed automatically? I mean, I think that's what we're doing here. It's not about, we can't resolve this particular, whether Ms. Jones was mistreated or not. I mean, this is not the forum for that, is what I'm saying.
Well, this is a perfect example, I think, of at least a snapshot of why we're potentially here. And I'm going to tell you that, you said that, I don't know, maybe it was my inference, that it's natural for us to defend our officers when they're right, when they're doing their job. I have no problem being honest about our actions. You know, there are absolutely learning points in this situation. I looked it up. Unfortunately, my internal affairs person is off, and she keeps her stuff pretty well locked up. I do not believe that she made a complaint at this time, and I know there may be several reasons why, and that's part of what we're here about. To maybe part of it is to figure out why people may not make those complaints right away. But if she had, we would have looked into this and addressed some of the not rudeness, but I'm having a hard time. Just that we could have used more empathy after the fact. Now, and again, just so we're clear, it's important to understand the facts, because we are going to make judgments about this one incident. This committee is absolutely going to do that. Miss Jones had I guess a nightgown or a one that came down to just above her knees. She was not unclothed to the extent that she said she was. She was not exposed to other than to the extent that Captain Spencer mentioned. Again, she asked for a bathrobe. Would I have preferred, and it will be addressed, that my officer afforded her something else to put on? But she wasn't walked out and paraded in any state of undress where any of her intimate parts were exposed. And sometimes that is the way it is. Somebody's under arrest, they're going to be taken in as they were. Again, the takeaway for me is that, yes, were the procedures followed? Did we follow procedures? Is there anything we can change? I agree with that. I just don't think this is a perfect example, as uncomfortable as it may be for the police department to talk about some of these things, even if it's just this one one particular incident. It gives the understanding, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too long. I have another quick example of some of the things that we deal with, not in the too distant, I guess, Hurricane Isaiah. We received a complaint from a company that had people out there watching wires, and they were approached by two cops, and the employees of the company watching the wires happened to be either brown or black, maybe Caribbean, and they made a complaint that the cops are very aggressive, and they were peppering with questions and wanted to know what they were doing there, and they felt very uncomfortable by it. We reviewed it. I actually reviewed it with the person. He was ex-law enforcement. He looked at the video, and there was absolutely nothing done wrong. Even he said the cops were polite. They explained everything. They were there for about 5 minutes. They said they understood, and then they left. I'm not dismissing those two people's feelings. I truly believe they weren't making it up, their feelings, and that they were lying or they were looking to cause any issues or had any agenda. The problem is that, you know, what is the hardest thing for law enforcement is the perception, the predisposed perception, even when the cops do it right, that we're doing something wrong. And if without video or anything else, as Jim said, there's no getting that back in the box. That's a side of this that I'd like us all to at least not understand, but understand that it is something that is real and could be part of the discussion, part of what we talk about, part of the problem that we're trying to figure out. So I think I've taken up way more time and spoken way more than I ever have, but
Well, I appreciate hearing from, you know, law enforcement on their perspective, because it is going to be helpful and, you know, to us, but I think it is something that needed to be heard, because we left that session very disturbed by her comments. So I really thought it was worthwhile hearing your side of it, because
I would have loved to have the family, some representative from that family during the incident to speak to their perspective, because I'm sure they would have had a different perspective.
From which family?
The family of the 14-year-old that almost got hit with the brick, because there's another perspective that we're missing.
I don't know.
That's not appropriate here, because that will intimidate people.
Yeah,
but this could be in a civilian review thing.
But
Yeah,
this is definitely something that we need to hear, because it's going to help us when we start making our policies, procedural changes. We can look into that. Definitely look into how that was handled and maybe how things could have been different. So thank you for sharing.
And segue into subcommittees.
So now, did everybody get a chance to have their subcommittee meeting? And if so, would you mind, and you got a chairperson? If the chairperson is on, or if some representative of the committee is on, could you tell us what you came up with so far? I know you probably only had maybe one meeting, but how did it go? Anybody want? Nada? You want to share first?
Sure.
Are you a chairperson?
Our chairperson is Katrina Jackson.
Okay.
I'm not the chairperson. Katrina is, but I don't believe she's on here, and I don't think our other member, Wade Hardy, is on either, unfortunately.
Okay.
So our subcommittee is entitled Transparency and Accountability, and the three of us reviewed 3 documents. I should actually, well, maybe Katrina already sent them to Karen, I don't know, but we reviewed 3 documents produced by NACOL, the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. And they're documents that help civilians such as ourselves think about what are the needs of the community. And I had actually reached out to the previous board president of NACOL, and I asked him, can we have some sample language of how a common council actually institutes a civilian review board? And he said examples are there, but he didn't want us to start there. He wanted us to think about what are the needs of the community first. because there are many different ways to set up a civilian review board. And actually, another takeaway from our second listening session, we heard from clergy, we heard from clergy leaders, from Kenneth Chamberlain. People were mentioning a civilian review board and NAACP. They want a civilian review board with teeth, they kept repeating. At our subcommittee meeting, we had talked about sort of a very basic review board, which is not a review board with subpoena power or investigative authority. It's basically a review board that looks at the decisions made by the Internal Affairs Department of the local police department and makes sure that the decisions were impartial and fair, and that discipline was actually meted out to any of the officers. So that's like a very basic setup for a civilian review board. So Katrina reached out to the chief and she asked him for certain data regarding, how many complaints are filed with internal affairs. But you have to remember, I think the way it's operating now, those complaints really involve police officers. It's an internal department. I mean, I guess they would also look at civilian complaints, but the way things are operating now, I think there are almost zero civilians would approach the Internal Affairs Department. So the idea of a civilian review board, we discussed having a place where members of the community, low-income residents of White Plains would feel comfortable if they had had an unfortunate encounter with police in White Plains, they could go and file their complaint, because we know they're not going to City Hall. We know they're not going to the police department to file a complaint. So this was really the basics of our first discussion. Our next meeting is Thursday next week at 6 p.m. Any of you who are interested, I know Captain Spencer will be joining us. It'll be right before our final listening session, and you're all welcome if you would like to participate in our committee meeting.
Thank you, Nada. That's great. You guys are off to a great start. Who else is on that would like to talk about their meeting?
Bernie, Tom. Oh, okay, go ahead, Frank.
No, go ahead, Bernie.
So I'm on the Policies and Procedures subcommittee, and we had one meeting, and in that meeting we just identified each other and took stock of exactly what we're looking to do. We had not all received the documents that were sent by Karen Pasquale to review, and so that was sent out this week. Actually, as of today, I sent that out to all committee members, and we're supposed to review that, and we'll have our next follow-up meeting this Sunday at 10. Karen has set up the date and time for us. The time for us on Zoom. So there's not much to report other than we have a framework to understand that we are to meet. We're going to review the documents as they've been handed to us, the policies and procedures that are in place now, and we will start to unravel and identify how we're going to understand and address any of the issues that we're starting to see and starting to hear about.
Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, hi, this is Frank. We had a, I'd like to say, I think we had a substantial meeting, a really good meeting in terms of the community engagement. And we looked at community engagement in terms of making sure that the policies and practices in our community is kind of collaborative. It results in increased public awareness from all stakeholders in the community. We talked about the 3 Ps of policing in the community, which is people, policies, and processes. We talked about making sure or ensuring that there's transparency, accountability, and hopefully being able to track and guide our community to ensure that the policies have a community perspective. We talked also about community engagement, including all elements or segments of the community. and that they're engaged in all of the policies and practices of the public safety department. We also talked about ensuring that we talked about the issue of policies and practices where they lend to positive outcomes, positive community reports and activities. We also talked about ways and strategies to involve every facet of our community in terms of promoting positive activities. We talked a lot about the National Night Out program, ways in which the community can be involved in the efforts of the police department. We talked about every, as I mentioned, from the schools to the houses of worship to community-based agencies. Everybody has a sense of aware education and information about the practices of the police department and how the community sectors, the police department, are working hand in hand to ensure effective outcomes. So I think that and this was our first effort. We talked about young people being involved in this from the front end, and again, it was just an opportunity to have a deep dive into what those policies are. We recognize that the police is doing a really great job in terms of engaging young people, but it's the youth who and the older youth that we're a little concerned about in terms of strengthening the relationships and partnerships with young people as they transition from adolescence to adulthood, to ensure that the policies and practices are protective, that they're safe and healthy. So this was our first meeting. We're going to do a deeper dive into this, and hopefully we'll be able to have some concrete information to share with the group.
Thank you, Frank. You guys, you talked about a lot. Good for you.
Yeah, sorry, Janice. Harriet, I don't mean to call you out, but for me, with our meeting, I think I don't know what happened with the time or anything. So what I'm hoping is that, and I think there was a little typo maybe with the time too. So I'm hoping that we'll meet and I can make myself available. I'll take off the time from work, but I just need a time so that I can let my management know, and I'm happy to do that. And hopefully, you know, we can have a meeting as soon as possible. I know there was a meeting, so I don't know if there's any debrief or minutes from that, but just wanted to say that.
Hey,
Right.
Rosemary, it's Patrick. Yeah, we did get a chance to meet last night. I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to get on the call, but we'll make sure we get you on the next one.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that.
No problem. I'll make sure I get your email and contact information so we can correspond individually. So I'll try to make this as quick as possible because we're the training and equipment subcommittee. So obviously we have quite a long list of to-dos and things to analyze. One of the first things that I'm gonna have to do is schedule a time to come in to meet with Chief Castelli and Captain Spencer and some of the other people on the team to learn a little bit more about your actual curriculum. And I'm sure there may be some things that you can even send me electronically, like via email. But I would like to schedule to meet with you to go over some of those things so we have a better understanding of what your current trainings and curriculums are. So we have a list of things that we're specifically addressing. We're going to be addressing the implicit bias training, and we have recommendations for a more in-depth training with the Undoing Racism training through the People's Institute of Survival and Beyond. We're going to be addressing mental health and disabilities, not just going over trauma and what that entails, but we're talking about trauma responsive, trauma informed trainings and interactions with civilians. And when we're talking about mental health and trauma, we're not just talking about mental health and trauma of the people that you're working with, but we're talking about the mental health of the officers themselves as well, and how they're going to cope with their day-to-day traumas. We'll be talking about specifically working with persons with disabilities. And one of the things under that as well is we're going to address the crisis call communications floor, like what happens on crisis calls via like starting with a 911 call. We're also going to address the Westchester County Police Academy initial trainings in Valhalla, New York. We need to understand more about those because all of the officers that do come to White Plains start at the police academy. So I know that we could probably get some answers from the county task force as well on, you know, what are the trainings there at the initial academy? What can we expand on there so that when they come to White Plains PD, they maybe have a greater foundation? And what are the qualifications? I know I might have to touch base with the committee that talks on qualifications as well, because we're trying to learn more about that and speak more on police licensing, which is going to be something that is quite a common topic throughout the whole county on police reform. Additionally, we have some ideas and models, some things that we feel not only the whole county, but White Plains PD specifically can expand on: Alternatives to Violence Project, the restorative justice approaches, including healing circles, diversion programming, which is like a lot of times alternatives for youth, which I've spoke about already with Chief Castellian, and he definitely wants to learn more about that, which is great. And then we also want to bring up, in addition to trauma training, the ACEs resilience study is a very great thing to pair with trauma training. We also want to, as we transition into equipment, we're going to be talking a lot about nonviolent approaches to policing. So that's going to be more adaptation to the classic, the original community policing, where police are out there in the community building a relationship with the community and from the community, using de-escalation, nonverbal and verbal interventions, mentoring, and really talking to people to try to get to know them and address situations before things escalate. A lot of what's involved in that and restorative justice approaches too is violence interruption, like our SNUG programs that we have in Yonkers and Mount Vernon. That's something else that I would like to bring up as another additional training idea or something to include. And then when it comes to equipment, it's not necessarily our forte, but we do know a lot of people that we can consult with to get more additional support and information when it comes to artificial intelligence, using of drones, tasers, and body cams. We're going to be talking about technology and equipment data collection specifically, storing and oversight, and policies to access the content collected from the equipment that is used by police officers. That's something that's going to be very specific to something that we're going to address in use of equipment. So again, when I do talk to the police officers and the PD about training, I would like to get some more information on police equipment. What you currently are using and what you might be studying to use in the future will be really helpful for us to know what we can do and what we can address.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Janice, can I say something?
Is Brian in your committee? Did
Brian Johnson.
Did we put Brian in there? I don't know. Brian, was he part of the meeting?
He wasn't on the meeting last night, but I would love to have him on the committee meeting.
Person for that equipment stuff, right?
Hi, Janice.
Hi.
I just actually emailed Harry. There was a little bit of confusion. I wasn't sure, being an active police officer, what I was supposed to be doing with this subcommittee. At first, it was that I wasn't supposed to be on it, but now I'm not sure. So I have no problem participating.
Resource. You definitely could be a good resource person for Patrick.
Not a problem. Chief, we're okay with that? I mean, that's something.
Yeah. There was a meeting you weren't on, Brian, when I said, you know, you might be a good person because of your SRT, SOD experience, but just real quick, if, you know, Patrick, certainly, you know, if you know, I'm a visual, hands-on type of guy. If you wanted to come in, or any of the members of the committee, we could actually show you what we actually have. If it's practical to give a demonstration and show you the capabilities, the limitations, the misinformation, you know, what, you know, when you see certain things on TV and movies, and you know, it's all glorified and or just not accurate as to what some of these weapons can and can't do. And anybody else who'd rather come in and speak, you know, sometimes it's easier for me to pull out a policy or procedure than to try to figure it out electronically. I'm just saying I'm a little inept at that. But and just quick, thirdly, you know, we have had a couple of tours and stuff like that. It's still open to the committee. Anybody who has not been here before is interested on, you know, really the inner workings. Just so if you prefer that perspective, you know, we are the focus. So you know, maybe it would be beneficial to have that that perspective. But all three of those things are open on the table.
Thank
Sounds
you,
good, yeah.
Patrick. Patrick, great job. Thank you. We got one more committee, qualifications and recruitment. Is somebody on from that committee?
So I see Judy Troilo, Reverend Trollinger, and Wade Hardy.
Are
and
either one of them on?
None of them are on.
Okay, so we don't have any update from that committee. Hopefully we will for the next one. I guess one
committee-
more thing, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that committee did meet via Zoom with me and Captain Spencer, and we talked for about an hour and a half maybe. So
With the-
they
with the
have
qualification group?
the hiring qualifications.
Qualifications, retention, and recruitment. We
Oh,
met
okay.
on Monday. Yeah, Monday,
Yes.
and it was about an hour and a half long. There was some good things that came out of it. I don't want to speak for the committee, but we did meet.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, so we heard from all 5 of the subcommittees. Patrick, you're the chairperson for training?
Yeah, for now.
Okay, and Bernie's for policy and procedures, Katrina's for transparency and accountability, and Frank is for community engagement, right?
No, Reverend Trollinger is community engagement.
Oh, okay, got you. So if you want to have meetings, you should let Karen know if you need to use the city Zoom information. She can provide that for you. Just let her know, and let her know by the Friday before the meeting when you're gonna meet. All
Yeah, I
right,
mean, just whenever you know, let me know.
okay, whenever you know, let her know. She may wanna come in on it, I may wanna come in on it, but let her know when you're gonna meet the following week, as soon as you do know. All right?
Okay,
So one
do you
more
want
thing.
us,
Huh?
do we have to use the city Zoom, or can we do it on our own? Like, I just want to understand.
I think you have to record it.
Okay.
Does it have to be recorded?
Well, it's something to think about and talk about.
I don't
No,
know.
that's a good idea.
Should it be recorded?
It helps. I mean, it helps to have it as a record. So we could do that. I'm gonna definitely correspond with the team to see what days work for that, like what day and time works for the team, and then I guess we'll just correspond back with you, Karen.
That's fine.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
I will say that, if there's one thing that the governor's guidance document emphasizes, it's transparency in the process. So, and I would just ask that the subcommittees operate in a consistent manner, because I don't think it would look good if one of the subcommittees was recording their meetings, but the others were not. So, what one does, all should do.
So
Okay.
what are we're gonna record, right, for transparency purposes? We can't ask the police to be transparent if we're not, so I think we're gonna all record our subcommittee meetings, not the little talk that you do before you get on, but once you officially open the meeting, it's to be recorded. Does Patrick want to say something?
I'm not sure.
We have one more flyer for our next week's forum. Did everyone see it?
No, nope. I can.
And it does say, let the youth speak, but it is for the youth specifically, but not limited. Because, I think we may have lost people in the first session. So, I mean, they still have an opportunity to speak.
So this is language that I discussed with Don Stevens and that we worked on together. I'm happy to change anything that the committee may wish me to change, but this is the current version that Don and I worked on.
What do you guys think?
I have a comment, Janice.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
I just really feel strongly that we need to have the discipline to ensure that our listening session stays a listening session. We should not be doing question and answer or back and forth. It's easy enough to answer a ground ball question, but that opens the door to some more complexities that we may not be prepared to discuss, or we may not be privy to discuss. So I think that we, especially those in the room, should be disciplined enough to steadfast to a listening session, staying a listening session.
I know you mentioned that before, and I apologize again. I thought I made it clear.
Thank you, Janice.
I tried. I'm sorry. I do apologize. And you're absolutely correct. It should stay a listening session. Are we going to do another session where we are able to address the questions and concerns that we come up with during the listening sessions?
Well, what I certainly think, I agree with Jim, and what I think that we should just tell whoever wants to ask a question, we will take the question and somebody in the committee will get back to them and answer their question. I think that certainly is fair. I don't think we should dissuade people from asking questions. Just understand that the forum is not for a question and answer period, ad lib kind of question and answer period.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Perfectly.
There may be another opportunity in the future to do a public presentation from the committee on the 5 areas, and speak to not questions individually, but if we can bring those questions into some of the recommendations that we've made, there might be an opportunity in the future to do that based upon our subcommittee meetings. But you're right.
Might be a good option.
Good idea. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, about the flyer. Are we okay with the flyer the way it is, or should we somewhere put down that all are welcome to speak?
Do you think that there'll be someone else that comes?
What do you mean?
Do you think adults will come?
I hope they do.
Okay, is that what we want? I thought we wanted this just for the kids.
Well,
Students.
yeah, well, we want to encourage the kids to speak, but
Okay, then it's fine.
I think we lost some possible concerns with the adults, I think, on the first session, because it didn't go very well. So I was wondering if we need to give them another opportunity to speak.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so then it's fine. In my opinion, then it's fine, because I was looking at the one where we really wanted students, but then this for me is fine as long all are welcome. Let the youth speak, but yeah, that needs to be prominent as well.
Can we ask the superintendent of White Plains Schools to send this out to his distribution list to the thousands of families?
Of course, he did send it out through his whole contact list before. If this is the final one we agree on, all I need is an email that says final, and I will get it out to his distribution list, which is how we communicate in our district, and we'll have people post it as well. So yes, I will definitely ask him to distribute.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Rosemary, I will get you and every other committee member a final document.
That's perfect. If the header could just be final doc, I will search for it in a few hours.
Sure.
All right. We're coming to a close.
Should we think about next Friday's meeting again?
We're gonna have the next forum is next Thursday at 7 p.m. There is room for a few people if they want to come in to let Karen know that they're coming. When should we have our follow-up meeting? Is Friday good? Next Friday?
I could do that at 12 noon if it works for everyone else.
Works for me. Does everybody else agree to Friday at noon? For the most part, huh?
I don't know if I'll be able to make it at noon, but that's okay. I mean, if everybody else wants to.
Yeah, I also may not be available, but I may be able to do it remotely by my phone. I just might not be at work next Friday.
Okay, so
I'll make if I'm not, I'll make every effort to log in using my phone or some other device.
okay. So by a show of hands, Friday 12 noon, good?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right,
Okay.
I think Friday 12 noon is it.
Mhm.
So
It's
the-
also good to do it sooner after the listening session while it's fresh in the
Right, right, I agree. So that will be our follow-up to the listening session, and then from that point on, we're gonna have regular meetings with the committee as a whole, and then the subcommittees are gonna meet. We're gonna have to start getting into the meat of this. Time is running out, it's gonna be holiday time, and it's gonna be harder to meet. So,
Sorry, one thing I'm not clear. What was the final decision about subcommittees? Are we required to record or not? And if we
Yes.
are required, huh?
yes,
And who should the chair of the committee be sending the file? It's a rather large file.
You can send it to me.
Send it to Karen.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
um,
Can you
Thank you.
also send the flyer, please, for the youth forum?
Will do, yes. I'll do
Okay.
that this afternoon.
Thank you.
are we, any other questions or anything? Okay, remember, you can always call me, you can always email me if you forgot to say something or you want to say something to me. Feel free. Have a good weekend, everyone. And
Thank you.
don't forget to let Karen know if you want to come in next Thursday evening.
We have room for about 3 committee members.
Okay,
I see Captain Spencer.
okay, great. And also, it will
No?
be from
Okay.
7 to 9, and we will be required to stay on for the whole time, whether we have people registered or not, because we never know. Okay, so from 7 to 9, right here. Everybody, Brian, do you saying something? No, okay.
Mm,
All right, so did Jimmy say he's coming in or no?
I don't think so, no.
No?
No,
Okay.
okay.
All right, everyone, have a good weekend.
All right.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
Frank. Enjoy your day.
I'm Patrick.
Happy
Patrick, you
birthday,
are-
Patrick.
Happy
Birthday, Patrick.
Have a good one. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.